Oh, hello. How's it going? I'm just in my room, and I was thinking, I'm going to go over America's political parties through the years because it's super confusing and people often get mixed up. And I'm pretty sure I heard you saying you wanted me to do this. Well, guess what? Either way, I'm going to. So there you have it. All right. We are going to start. Hopefully, you can see the board. This is my super high tech. If you even saw what this is balanced on, you would just cry. But I'm going to take you through political parties through the years. Okay? So, first, oh my goodness, stay with me. Okay. This is so precariously balanced, you have no idea. Kind of like our psyches in this last week before APs. We start first with not official political parties, but rather a breakdown of kind of two ideologies. And we know that these ideologies are going to be around the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists when it comes to the Constitution. So if you're a Federalist, you believe a ton in strong central power, right? That means you're all about the national government. These guys are also going to really support the idea that we have to move forward as a country and get things together and have a strong national government, not as much state government. We know down the road they're also going to support things like a national bank, etc. These guys over here are all about a strong state government. And they are terrified of something happening again like it did with Great Britain. They really don't want to see that occur. So they think the more we have an Articles of Confederation type government, the better. These guys are more likely to be our founding fathers as kind of college educated. They're more likely to have more money. And they are going to be people that are usually from the upper classes of society, okay? Think about our founding fathers. Most of them went to college. They have the powdery white wigs, the whole thing. These guys over here, not as much. They're going to be more of a mixed bag when it comes to classes and economics. And even though they are not going to be, there's going to be some people that are wealthy, there's going to be some people that are middle class, but you have more lower class support at first. And at first, these guys are much more popular, right? And these guys are not as popular in the least. So again, more money over here, more of a mixed bag over here, really strong national government and power, and of course state power and state government over here. And then with these guys, of course, they are pro-Constitution. And these guys are against the Constitution. So names that we would associate with each, someone like Sam Adams is over here, Patrick Henry, we'll just use their first names because we know them so well by now. Over here, you name it. We have Washington, we have John Jay, you have Alexander Hamilton. Most people, if Jefferson was in town, which he's not, he is going to be in France, good job. He would probably be over here. And of course, he's going to be quite miffed and ask, what did I miss, when he gets back from his sojourn and realizes that, in fact, these guys win. Because Alexander Hamilton and a lot of them are going to tirelessly publish these Federalist papers. And when they do, they get overwhelming support as time goes on for the Constitution, and we decide that we are going to have a Constitution with a strong national government. It's going to be bicameral. Slaves are only going to count for 3/5 of a person. Women are not going to get the rights to vote, nor Native Americans. There's lots of issues, but as Ben Franklin's going to say, I do not know best, and I do not know that we cannot do something better down the road. Therefore, I support this, and many people are going to feel that way. So from this, now we split into our political parties officially. Again, these are ideologies that kind of set the stage. And we know the issue that, again, here in the very late 1700s and again in the mid 1800s, the issue that always splits people up is going to be the national bank. The national bank just like tears people apart, right? This is so much more fun to move around than when I'm sitting down. I get to, okay, I'll stop dancing. So the Federalist Party stays the Federalist Party. They become an official political party. So the Federalists, again, are going to support really the same things as these guys up here. It is a strong national government. Hi, Angelica. Hang on one second, guys. Let me pause. When you're having a political party, you never know who's going to stop by. Okay, just kidding. Let's keep going. They belong in the national power realm, right? Again, we have a lot of our founding fathers, same people, Washington, John Jay, Madison, these guys are going to be over here. It's interesting, Madison kind of the bloop, bloop, then goes back to Jefferson. But they are going to support the Constitution. They are pro-Constitution, obviously. These guys are more likely to team up with Great Britain. They are more likely to have a scenario where they would be allied with them. And also, they are going to believe in something called loose construction. And we're going to talk about that in a second because, of course, they are pro-national bank. and that is where they really are going to form. And then over here, we're going to have the Anti-Federalists now with Jefferson's leadership turn into the Jeffersonian Republicans, but you also might see them as the Democratic Republicans, okay? And these guys are just the opposite of these guys. So if they are national, they are state. If they are pro-Constitution, they are anti, slowly getting over it because now they know they lost. Way more likely to buddy up with France, right? Because we know Jefferson is obsessed. And they're also going to be strict constructionists when it comes to the Constitution and how they interpret it. And also we have them against the National Bank, against the National Bank. So the whole loose construction, strict construction thing happens because of that elastic clause. When Alexander Hamilton is trying to get the National Bank off the ground, he is going to cite this elastic clause. It's also called the necessary and proper clause. And he's going to say, you know what, there are times where we have to use this, and now is a desperate time, and our economy's in the toilet, so let's do it. Thomas Jefferson fights this within an inch of his life, but he is given a couple things to kind of move this over. One is we know that to support the national debt plan that Alexander Hamilton has as part of his Federalist Party thing, the capital is going to be Washington, D.C. It's going to be in the South. And of course, Jefferson is thrilled with this and takes over and shoves out L'Enfant. And thank goodness for Benjamin Banneker. And another thing, as time goes on, is going to be, you know, just the fact that Jefferson doesn't win this one. He just doesn't. So we are going to get a national bank. That is going to happen. Okay, so remember all this, and I'm going to move these guys up. So where it'd be really good if I had like a rolling board. That'd be way more fun. Way more fun. Getting a workout. So the Federalists and now the Jeffersonian Republicans, or also the Democratic Republicans, are still doing what they're doing. And these guys do end up getting the National Bank. And these guys do end up getting the National Bank, and they're not pleased about it. But time is going to roll on. These guys start to do themselves in. And what happens is Hamilton is going to die. That's going to be a huge blow for the party, right? And we could all shed a little tear. Lin-Manuel is somewhere for sure. So Hamilton is no more. They also are going to just not really be popular as time goes on. And they don't support the War of 1812. They hold something called the Hartford Convention. And they say that it is very much against their interests and they don't want to support this war because it's causing them to be at odds with the British. That's really a nail in the coffin for them. They're going to fade away after this. These guys keep going and they more or less really turn into like the Democratic Party as time goes on. So now I want to take you to the 1820s, okay? We've gone through the War of 1812. These guys have been fading away. These guys have been growing stronger. These guys really, as far as their pro-national government, pro-national projects, pro-national bank, the Federalists really stay the same, but they take on another name, and that's the Whig Party. And I know that's a big glaze over, but for our purposes right here and for your purposes on the exam, the Whigs are very similar in their aims to the Federalists. Again, big ringleader here is going to be Henry Clay. And I can show you Henry Clay. Hold on one moment. Henry Clay. Do you see him? There he is. He's looking great. And long story why we have that in this room. It's a good one. Henry Clay is going to support this. He supports things like the National Bank. He supports things like a national tariff. He is also going to support lots of infrastructure, the American system, all that stuff. Growing over here as a Democratic presence ever since he was in that biggest battle that wasn't actually a battle in the War of 1812 is Andrew Jackson. And Andrew Jackson versus Henry Clay, it's going to be a blood feud, right? We know how this is going to go down. So Jackson is going to be that big Democratic name, and we start to have this thing called Jacksonian democracy. Again, he really appeals to people because he is outside of Washington. People see him as this war hero, see him as someone without a college education, and it appeals to them. Go figure. The less informed you are, the more popular you are in America. Jacksonian democracy, one of the big things, they are against the National Bank, against. Jackson saw it as favoring the wealthy, and he also saw it as unconstitutional. And what's going on is Hamilton's plan for the National Bank is actually up for renewal. So Henry Clay pushes it forward because he thinks that Jackson's going to act like such a banshee that it's going to make him look ridiculous in public. Jackson does act like a banshee. He supposedly says, I will kill it when it comes to the National Bank, and that gets him elected. And Henry Clay is not going to be. But again, that National Bank is the big pull apart that you see people divide either on this side or this side, pro-National Bank against National Bank as time goes on. So now we're going to get into the 1850s, and we know this is prime time going towards the Civil War, right? So our Democrats are going to fracture, our Whigs are going to fracture, and we're going to see the birth of a whole new political party. Democrats are losing favor as time goes on because the issue that's dividing everybody is about slavery, right? So when someone like Stephen Douglas has the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and he says he supports popular sovereignty, and he says, you know, the Dred Scott decision was actually the wrong decision to make, he's alienating both people from the North, people from the South. These guys are breaking apart. So we're going to have some Democrats leave. We'll call them little d. We also have the Whigs break apart. You're going to have Whigs from the South become the Cotton Whigs. And then you have Whigs from the North known as the Conscience Whigs. And of course, that's because they had a conscience about slavery. So the Conscience Whigs plus Democrats plus another independent party called the Free Soil Party all form the new severely radical and severely anti-slavery party that is the Republican Party, led by, of course, our one and only Abraham Lincoln, William Seward, others for sure, but Abraham Lincoln is going to grow to be the face of this party, and ironically he was chosen because he was the more moderate candidate. People thought he would appeal more across the board. And we know by the time we get to that election of 1860, you not only have a Republican candidate of Abraham Lincoln, you have a Southern moderate, a Southern Democrat, and a Northern Democrat. When you have 4 candidates, and we cannot even agree on 2 that we dislike, but we need 4, you know our country is breaking apart. So from the beginning, the Republican Party is going to be the more radical party. They are definitely going to be the more liberal party. And that is going to change by the time we get to the Second Industrial Revolution and like the 1880s, 1890s, otherwise known as the Gilded Age, right? So again, I'm going to erase this, get rid of this. Bye, 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 bye. And over here, we're going to have the Republican Party. And now we did like a little swap. I'm going to put the Democratic Party over here, okay? So as we go on, the Democratic Party, and I'm going to do like a little side note here. Remember our populists? Remember our farmers? Remember William Jennings Bryan, who just refuses to die and then finally does because evolution kills him? Scopes monkey trial, look it up. The Democrats are going to be more likely to support these guys. They are going to be sometimes, again, depends on the candidate, oh my goodness, not pro, but anti-gold standard. And they're more likely to support kind of the little guy and more social reforms, more things when it comes to, you know, fairness for farmers or welfare, things like that as time goes on. And this is really now at the turn of the century, so going into the 1900s, where we can say, okay, Democrats look like this, Republicans look like this, and looks familiar to what we know today. Republicans start to be like William McKinley-esque backed, very much gold standard in big business. And you're going to see over time belief in tax cuts. We were just talking about that today with Reagan. If you cut taxes from the top, lots of Republicans are going to say then that's money that is freed up for investments. And that's a very Hamilton-esque kind of idea, that trickle-down economics, right? Over here, instead of wealth being a triangle like this and it's coming down, people say flip it and give the money to people in need first. This is what someone like FDR would say, right? FDR would say, let's give it to the American people who need it most, whether we're using, you know, in LBJ's time, something like Medicare and Medicaid through Great Society, or whether we're doing something like FDR's with Social Security, it can eventually trickle down to the upper classes, but who cares because they have enough money anyways. That's kind of the idea. So again, these are gross exaggerations, but to give us a sense, if you have money, and again, this is 1900s and really then into our current society. If you have money, Republicans are more likely to spend it on the military today. Democrats are more likely to spend it on social programs today. If you have issues that are more liberal causes, you will usually find them over here. If you have issues that are more conservative causes, you will usually find them over here. And this changes throughout time, but for the most part, through the 60s and the 70s, when you see things like gun control, like abortion, like you know, affirmative action, school integration, stuff like that, that's going to be over here on the Democratic side. And then the opposite is going to be over here on the conservative side. A couple interesting things happen with this. In the 1930s, African Americans always voted Republican, right? Because Abraham Lincoln got rid of slavery, 13th Amendment. That was the ultimate statement to the African American community from the Republican Party. Well, guess what? FDR, with his black cabinet, with Mary McLeod Bethune, with the moves that he is making for diversity in his administration, African American votes flip. So African American votes in the 1930s are going to come over and they are going to mostly be Democratic. And you still find that true today. The vast majority of African Americans in our country are going to vote Democratic. Something else interesting happens when we get to the 1950s and we start to talk more about integration. You start to see John F. Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, LBJ, these guys supporting things like school integration, supporting Brown versus Board, supporting sometimes things like forced busing and whatnot. You have a lot of Southerners who were Democrats, because remember, Solid South, right? After Reconstruction, they kicked all the Republicans out. The Republicans were still left over from Lincoln. They were people that supported Reconstruction, radical Reconstruction, Thaddeus Stevens, Charles Sumner, cane broken over his head, right? These guys have always gone Democrat, but now, and they were called Dixiecrats for a long time because of that, now they see what's going on. Now they see that a lot of Democrats favor civil rights, and they want out because of white supremacy. So they are going to go over here. And to this day, you still have a lot of red states, as we know, in the American South, right? Because they're going to flip that switch. And it originally is driven because they don't like civil rights. And then in the 1980s, something else interesting happens. This side of things, this conservative, what we're going to call new right, under the time of Ronald Reagan, is going to not just have these, deeply conservative beliefs that get reinforced because Reagan's in power and also reinforced because, they're just growing in reaction to a lot of those changes in the 1960s and 70s that people didn't like, but they also team up with Christianity. And this is kind of a newer thing, at least for us now in this day and age, that you have a political party that is going to have that religious tie, right? So then really, gosh, I don't know if I have time to go into where we are today with our political parties. I will leave that to the interwebs and to the crazy people on blogs because there's a lot to say. So hopefully you're reading the news and you're informed on that. But that's kind of a rough sketch of America's political parties through the years. Thank you guys so much, and you're going to be wonderful on Friday for your big exam. Bye.